Okay, we're about to dive into a psychological mechanism that, honestly, most professionals only talk about behind closed doors. This isn't your typical stuff about confidence or motivation. No, this is a core principle of human behavior that once you really get it, allows you to see the hidden code that drives pretty much everyone around you.
And there's a good reason it's kept quiet. This kind of knowledge gives you a level of leverage that most people just never, ever develop. It's like you're moving from just watching human nature to actually understanding its operating system.
So, what is it, right? What is this hidden force that's more powerful than logic, stronger than emotion, and can even override our own sense of right and wrong? Well, the answer is way simpler, and frankly, a lot more potent than you'd probably guess.
Yeah, we're talking about a force that completely operates beyond logic. It's the silent engine behind our biggest decisions, and it's being quietly used all the time by corporations, by politicians, by leaders to influence everything from who we trust to what we buy to what we fear.
And that force is identity. But hold on, not in the way we usually talk about it. We're talking about the specific, carefully built version of ourselves that we believe in, the person we see in the mirror. And, this is the important part, it's the version of ourselves that we are absolutely terrified of losing.
And here's the fundamental rule, the one thing you really have to remember. When you put someone's logic up against their identity, identity is going to win every single time. People will defend a terrible decision, they'll stay in a bad situation, they'll ignore facts just to protect the way they see themselves.
So you might be asking, okay, how do you actually use this? Well, the first step to influencing anyone is to figure out the hidden label they live by. You have to find that identity they're protecting. That's your way in.
And what's wild is how these identities work. People build their entire lives around protecting these little labels, being the smart one, the strong one, the independent one, and they will defend that label with everything they have, their time, their money, even their relationships.
Which brings us to the main technique here, and it's a pretty controversial tool in behavioral psychology. It's called identity mirroring, and it's controversial because, well, it walks a very, very fine line between genuine influence and straight-up manipulation.
And this chart really nails why it's so powerful. See, mirroring is not flattery at all. Flattery just makes people suspicious, right? But recognition, that's different. That's about seeing someone for who they believe they are. And when a person feels truly seen like that, their walls just come down.
The process itself is almost deceptively simple. First, you detect that hidden identity they protect. Second, you reflect it back to them, not with praise, but with simple recognition. Something like, you seem like someone who thinks deeper than most people. And then, step 3, you just watch. And what you'll see is something psychologists call a consistency loop. The person will, without even realizing it, start to adjust their actions to stay in line with the identity you just held up to them. They're not doing it for you, they're doing it to be consistent with their own self-image.
Okay, and this is where it gets incredibly powerful. Once you've created that alignment, you can actually guide someone's behavior without ever giving a direct order. You're not pushing them anymore, you're kind of steering from the inside.
So think about a normal direct command like think carefully, right? It's straightforward, but it can immediately put someone on the defensive. It almost implies they weren't thinking carefully to begin with, and that can feel like an attack on their intelligence.
Now compare that to an identity-aligned phrase like, you strike me as someone who always thinks long-term. See the difference? You're not telling them what to do, you're telling them who they are. The action you want is no longer your idea, it's just a confirmation of their identity. And just like that, the resistance vanishes.
But, of course, there's a dark side to all this, a flip side.
Because if you can strengthen an identity, you can also weaken it. It's called an identity fracture. And it's all about destabilizing someone's self-image by subtly, quietly questioning if they're being consistent. Phrases like these, they're like psychological scalpels. Saying, that doesn't sound like you, creates this little moment of internal panic. Their mind just scrambles to fix that crack in their identity, and they'll often rush to change their behavior just to prove you wrong and prove to themselves that they are who they think they are.
So, what happens to you after you learn all this, after you start seeing these mechanics everywhere? Well, this kind of knowledge doesn't just give you a new skill set. It fundamentally changes how you see the world and how you move through it.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. You stop getting emotionally tangled up in arguments, and you just start observing two identities clashing. You stop being so susceptible to manipulation because you can see it coming a mile away. You go from being reactive to being strategically detached.
But here's the bottom line. The real test isn't about learning this stuff.
It's about what you choose to do with it. Because the temptation to shape outcomes, to guide people without them knowing, it can be strong. This is where you have to pair this knowledge with some serious responsibility.
Look, understanding identity can absolutely make you more persuasive, more insightful, more influential. It can make you incredibly powerful. So the final question really isn't about what you can do with this knowledge, it's about who it will turn you into.